My focus as a leader is very much, I would say, first is on the mission. I've always been very mission based and thinking about what are we trying to achieve. And I think that that suited me well. I've tended to gravitate towards positions that are either sort of startup or they're an opportunity to be able to really drive some kind of interesting or big goals. And I think that that mission focus is a key part. Another big focus for me is I kind of don't like the term servant leader, but in some ways I would say that that's really how I lead. I think that it's really important to empower people and to be able to find what their kind of best or unique talent is.
Hey guys, welcome back. I'm your host, Matt Fagioli, and today's special guest is CEO of Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, Ginger Wilcox. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks. It's so great to be here with you, Matt.
I know. I'm so excited about this conversation. And, it's funny. I feel like on every one of these episodes, I'm like, hey, this is an old friend. But I'm like, we've known each other forever, obviously. And this is the first chance I've really gotten to catch up with you since you became CEO of Better Homes. And so I'm incredibly excited to catch up and share the journey a little bit with everybody. And so, right off, can you introduce yourself a little bit and talk about, your career journey before BHG?
Certainly. And we've known each other for a really long time. I think it's a, kind of a testament to this industry is all about relationships and the people that you meet along the way. I've had the, very unique opportunity to have been part of this industry really in some ways since birth. I'm a third generation real estate professional. My grandfather was a developer in Prescott Valley, Arizona. My mother is still a practicing agent in Santa Cruz, California. She's been practicing for over 45 years, which is really hard to believe. My first job in real estate was actually delivering her flyers at the age of about 5. She would put me in these little pigtails and she'd take me out in the Arizona heat and I would open doors for her, literally. So that was a really great opportunity to sort of learn about real estate from early days. Every conversation, my entire life was really related to real estate in some way, shape, or form as we sat around the dinner table because of the family ties. In college, I went to school at Arizona State University and I got licensed in Arizona, which is where my mother originally started her career. And I started to work with her. But after I graduated, felt like I wanted to really use my degree. So I moved to Silicon Valley and I worked in high tech for a number of years until my daughter was born and I decided to get back into real estate. So I was a California-based real estate agent and ultimately broker, and quickly became a top agent, I think, because of sort of that family legacy of knowing and hearing about real estate my whole life, but also being able to leverage some of that tech background, early on. And I was an early adopter of a lot of the social media, the technology. I was building a team and was leveraging some of the things that I had learned in my career, which kind of got the attention on the national circuit and gave me the opportunity to expand beyond my real estate business, which ultimately led me to Trulia. I was an early employee at Trulia and was there until the Zillow acquisition, which was an incredible learning ground. It really was a great experience and kind of re-sparked I would say, sort of my enterprise or executive level experience. And I went on from there to found a mortgage company, worked in mortgage for a few years, worked in fintech. And last year, I had the unique opportunity to be tapped for the successor of Sherry Chris, who started Better Homes and Gardens 15 years ago, icon in this industry. And here I am. So kind of a crazy journey. You never know how you're going to get there. But, I think that my experience across sort of the different industries, being on the technology side, being in mortgage, being in real estate, really uniquely positions me for what I'm doing today.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, of that early group, I don't know, 50 or 100 of us that, were at what I consider the beginning of the real tech explosion, in real estate. You have arguably, one of the most diverse and deep experiences from all of that time. So it's just like a natural progression. When I saw that you had taken this role, I was like, of course, that makes perfect sense to me. You were part of that scene, and were you doing all the blogging? Remember when blogging was the cool thing in 07 and 08 and whatever? Talk about that a little bit, if that was part of your deal.
I was. I actually had a blog called Blog by the Bay. It was like Inman runner-up for most innovative website, one of those years way back when. And, was heavily using all of the social media tools in my business, was using email marketing. And I think I was actually one of the first agents in my area to have a website, which is kind of crazy. I don't feel like I'm that old, but it kind of grows on us quickly, I guess you could say. It was always a key part of my strategy. And I've always been sort of at the forefront of technology when I think about anything that I'm looking to adopt. And that was certainly a big driver in my career.
Yeah, I think back in that season, was when, IDX and all that stuff became a thing, and nobody knew what the heck it was. We were all doing it. And then, Facebook and Twitter came out, and I was so pissed that one of the founders of Twitter was named Matt. So I'm like, I can't get at Matt. But it was that early. I remember Pacatano and all those guys working on that. So it's crazy. Well, I want to talk about leadership style. When you step into a role like you have now, obviously you've come to it with, a philosophy that you've developed in the last 20 years. Talk about, when you walked into the Better Homes and Gardens office. I don't know if you actually physically walk in the office or not, but what did you kind of think you were going to bring to the room in terms of leadership style?
Great question. And I think that leadership is so important. I've been very fortunate to have some great mentors in my career, and also some leaders that I would say were not necessarily some of the best, but you learn from kind of both sides of it as you get to a position like this. My focus as a leader is very much, I would say, first is on the mission. I've always been very mission based and thinking about what are we trying to achieve. And I think that suited me well. I've tended to gravitate towards positions that are either sort of startup or they're an opportunity to be able to really drive some kind of interesting or big goals. And I think that mission focus is a key part. Another big focus for me is I kind of don't like the term servant leader, but in some ways I would say that's really how I lead. I think that it's really important to empower people and to be able to find what their kind of best or unique talent is as part of being a leader. And through that, when you can find those sort of gems that each person has, it really creates loyalty with your team and creates the opportunity for you to do something kind of unique and special. Coming to Better Homes and Gardens real estate last year was certainly sort of a unique time. And one, following in the footsteps or, being a successor to Sherry Chris, who had been with the company from the very beginning, was one area. But then as we looked at the changing industry landscape, was obviously a time of quite a bit of evolution, change, and also stress in our space. And I think that takes a leader that can be very comfortable with being adaptable and evolving. And that's something that I've always prided myself on, is the ability to kind of, even though I'm very energetic, I've been described as the Energizer Bunny. I never stop going and I'm always sort of on the move. I think that I have an ability to be able to be calm when things are chaotic or stressful. And that really has served me well.
I was thinking when you were talking about Sherry, Chris, and she was, like she still is a very powerful, iconic leader, and in terms of women in the real estate space, maybe the most, looked at, pointed to leader as like, wow, like I wish I could do that. And man, those are shoes to fill for sure. I guess I'm curious how you feel about that, and maybe if she said anything to, like, when she handed you the keys, what did she say?
Well, I've always said, and from the very early days, like, there's no one who can replace Sherry. She is unique, and she has, done incredible things for not only for Better Homes and Gardens real estate, but for our industry. And so my goal was to be uniquely myself. And I actually just wrapped up what we call our founder circle, which is our top companies that came together for the first time for me since I've been in this position. And I had a number of them say after that they were really excited for this next chapter. And they were also really impressed at how I've been able to take this position and be uniquely myself in it. And I think that Sherry really recognized as she was looking for who would be her next successor. She was part of that process as well. She wanted somebody that was different from her, because she saw that this is a time in our space where things are different. And Sherry and I have talked about it a lot. What she was really excited about as we were looking at me stepping into this position was my technology background and my marketing background as well. I've been the CMO, the chief marketing officer for multiple companies, taken a couple of companies public, and because of that background, as we look to the next phase of growth for Better Homes and Gardens, I think that I've been able to really leverage those skill sets, and I still have Sherry to lean on. I talk to her fairly frequently, but she was excited about the opportunity for a different type of leader, and that's certainly kind of the role that I've played.
That's cool. You said earlier that you're kind of very mission oriented. Let's talk about that. So what's the mission and vision of BHG, and where are we going next?
My goal is for Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate to be one of the fastest growing real estate franchises. And I think that we have such a great opportunity. This brand is iconic. It's a brand I've known for a long time, but as I've delved into it and really been able to see how consumers perceive this brand, how the affiliates in our network perceive the brand, it's really actually quite special. And when I look for what our future is, I think that like true icons, every icon has to evolve. And that's something that is kind of my laser focus right now, is how to ensure that we are adapting for the future and making sure that we really leverage what are kind of our greatest assets. Many people recognize that we have this relationship with Better Homes and Gardens, but they may not realize that Better Homes and Gardens is actually owned by, the magazine publication is owned by Dotdash Meredith, which is the largest digital publisher in the world. And that's something that no other real estate company has access to. And so I'm really excited about being able to leverage a lot of that as I think about where our future goes.
Yeah, it's such an iconic brand. And, there are other iconic brands in real estate, especially in the luxury space. But I think that, this one to me, says more Main Street and mainstream than any of those. And, it's really interesting. Can you speak a little bit about, the relationship with Better Homes and Gardens and what that looks like, how that operates?
For sure. So we have a pretty deep integration with them, and what that gives us is something that other companies don't have. The readership of Better Homes and Gardens and Dotdash Meredith has nearly 50 million readers a month, which is kind of crazy to think about. It's enormous, and in some ways, I would say one of our best kept secrets. And we have through them access to information, insights, and actual, I would say contacts to be able to reach their base of consumers, which is something that no other company can really touch. And so if an agent is looking for increasing their sphere of influence, or whether they're looking to market a listing, they have access to a database that enables them to kind of hone in, and that has unique insights that are based on the demographics of that particular area. So you can really sort of pinpoint, it's actually called Pinpoint, the consumers that are uniquely positioned to fit whatever that kind of look and need is. We also have a lot of opportunities where we're doing like this. For example, in May, there was the Owning It edition of the magazine, and that also had a pretty big digital component of it as well. And throughout that Owning It issue, you saw the Better Homes and Gardens agents that were heavily featured through there and really telling the stories. And so when we think about home, Better Homes and Gardens is all about home. And it's about home 365 days a year. And we're really leveraging that access to be able to bring that to the consumers in our network, but then tie that experience back to real estate so that people, as they're thinking about the things that they're doing to their home, how they're improving it, how they're living in it, that it's tied back to what we do every day, which is help get more people in homes and help them find their next home.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. That's awesome. Well, let's talk about innovation. So, for people like me and you probably too, as soon as you say innovation, you start thinking tech, and that's certainly a piece of it. But there are other areas of innovation. Now you've been in this role for a minute, so you sort of got to look under the hood and see everything that's happening in the company. Tell us about what you are doing or plan to do in terms of innovation within the company and within the industry.
So I would say first and foremost, we're kind of lucky because we're part of this Anywhere family, and that gives us an enormous power of scale because we're able to invest a lot in thinking about how do we innovate for the future. And obviously technology is a big piece of that. We are heavily focused on thinking about the consumer experience and how we continue to improve that. And I'm very excited about what's ahead as we think about AI. It's really too early, I would say, to fully predict what the impact of that is going to be, but it certainly is going to have an enormous impact. And I think it has an opportunity to be able to make the consumer experience better. I also think there's an opportunity for us to be, thinking about how that makes the agent experience better and reducing the workload that agents have today on things that are not really necessarily part of that kind of core experiential skill set that they might have. We're using technology pretty heavily as we think about how to support our broker network. And a lot of that is around what I would kind of tag as insights and information that make them be able to make smarter decisions, which I think is really helpful. So innovation for us, I would say is one component is the technology piece. The other is thinking about, and you kind of touched on this, is thinking about how do we actually change what that consumer experience is? Because I think that as we look to the future, consumers are looking for more out of their agent, and ensuring that our agents in our network have access to the best resources, the best technology, the best training that enables them to continue to evolve their sort of experience that they're delivering is also a key part of that as well. And then we've got some other things we're working on that I can't necessarily talk about right now, but we're really excited about some of the things we'll be able to share in the future.
That's cool. Awesome. How about, we talked about AI and a little bit in terms of the way that's trending. And there's obviously a ton going on the national scene and in the media about the sort of changes in commissions and the way the consumer experience is shifting. And, those of us who were at the top of the profession or are at the top of the profession, I think to those people, it doesn't seem like much of a change, right? I mean, you're just sort of already operating that way, but there's a big swath of the industry that, is making big changes, needing to make big changes. And some of that, causes fear and, any change causes everybody to freak out. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective on what's happening in the industry, what's next or where the puck is moving to?
Well, I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said that for some people, there's not a lot. I'm not super afraid of anything that's happening right now. I think that every few years, we have a new thing that we're facing in our industry, and you just have to look at it and go, okay, how are we going to adapt to that? But the reality is that consumers for a long time have been talking about how they want change, they want trust, they want transparency. And as I look to the future, I think that now's really the time for that kind of big shift to happen. For our network, I don't feel like it's an enormous change because we've really heavily focused for a long time, pre-me, on ensuring that we've got the best technology training and tools and that our agents are delivering real value each and every day. I think there's certainly people in our industry who haven't been through cycles, and that for a while transactions were kind of falling out of the sky, and now it's a lot harder to be able to kind of win that business. And what when I look at it, I think now's the time for the professional agent, and it's the time for the professional broker as well. And those agents that deliver that complete experience to the end consumer have always had the trust of those consumers. They come back to them time and time again and will continue to do so. And the same thing on the broker side. I think that for a while we've seen that the broker level experience didn't have to be what it was because the agents didn't necessarily always need that. But now more than ever, I think that agents need the skill set of a broker that can help them adapt and get past some of the noise that's happening in our industry and really focus on doing what has always been sort of the core of this business, which is transacting with consumers and providing a great experience.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for sharing that. I mean, it's a difficult time for a lot of people. And I think that, everybody's listening for those voices, and you're one of those voices for, hey, what's the path forward? Let's talk about sustainability, energy efficiency. I think everybody now, when they make their purchases of homes, they're looking at those things. They're looking at lifestyle factors, and how does Better Homes and Gardens see those things, and what are you guys doing at the national level on those kinds of initiatives?
So I'd say, first of all, I'd like to say that our headquarters our building in Madison, New Jersey, is LEED Gold certified and has been since 2013. And the building's exterior is LEED Silver certified by the U.S. Green Building Certification Institute. So very excited that we kind of live and breathe that from a perspective of what we do. And certainly a big part of some of the changes that happen as part of COVID. It also enables more green practices as part of everyday way we do business. But from thinking about it from a homeownership perspective, it is a key part of what I would call our client success programs, and how we think about ensuring that agents have the right tools and information to be able to support the consumers that they serve. And I think that we're still pretty early in what I would call sort of this green process, because now people realize it sells homes. And I think that will certainly go on to change how we do business in the future. But for right now, our focus is heavily on that agent and broker training, so that they see how that's a key part of business going forward.
Yeah, I think we've gotten to a point in the industry where it's not just something you can brush to the side. You really need to have, as an agent and a broker, really have some knowledge base on how to handle all of that and help your consumer get what they were seeking. And I think we're all learning that it isn't a shift again for a lot of agents, but the industry has to get centered completely on the consumer and the value equation there for sure.
Along the sort of the same lines as we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I would put it in sort of that same category as sustainability, because for a long time it's been where you have, a small subset of agents that are thinking about it as part of their business because it's the right thing to do. But as we look to how are we making sure that we serve the largest, consumer base possible, and how do we look to make sure that we continue to grow market share, it just simply makes sense from a business perspective, because there's these huge demographics of home buyers and prospective home buyers that have been underserved that are ready, able, and willing to be in the marketplace. And so I'm excited to see that change for our industry as the broader industry sort of recognizes and adapts, diverse and inclusive practices in their businesses.
Well, I know that's been a big part of BHG from the very beginning with Sherry. And so it makes perfect sense that you would continue to focus there for sure. I want to talk about marketing and branding. BHG has always been, a standout brand, both the parent company and then the real estate company for all of these years as well. And I know that a lot of your background has been in that space. So what do you think about where BHG is with brand and kind of how do you look at that as you go forward into this next season?
It's a really interesting question. And, we've seen sort of this swing to individual agent branding. Actually, yesterday I was out and was riding my bike and I saw some different open house signs. I'm like, God, I don't recognize those. Is that an open house or is there is something else going on? And it was, sort of this, the agent or small team's individual branding. And I think that we've seen this and there's probably likely to be some sort of swing back, because real estate brands really are something that have been a key part of our industry for a long time. And now, as we look to this sort of evolving landscape that we're in, consumers want trust. And when you think about trust, David Marine, who's our chief marketing officer, has given this analogy, and I think that it's really true. When you go into a store, you go into a restaurant, you're not looking for a uniquely branded soda. You want a Coke because you want that. You know exactly what you're going to get when you order that Coke or your Pepsi or whatever that looks like. But Coke is synonymous with a trusted brand. And when I think about Better Homes and Gardens, and really for any company right now, agents may want their own brand, but consumers are looking for that trust. And that's something that we really uniquely have. There's deep love for our brand. The brand's been in place in consumers' homes for 100 years, and it's really synonymous with homes. And when they see our signs, our green signs, they're instantly recognizable and they're instantly trusted. And so I think that as I think about the power of a brand, that's an enormous benefit that we have. And it's something that we'll continue to think about leveraging as we go forward. Through our partnership with Better Homes and Gardens, we actually have the ability to reach nearly 70% of US home buyers, which is something that most people don't have. And those home buyers are seeing our brand in their homes every single month. It's not just the cookbook, it's the magazine. I was in my hairdresser last week and there were Better Homes and Gardens magazines sitting on the table. And our agents actually have the opportunity to brand those magazines with their name on it and deliver them to the different dentists and hairdressers and other things in their market. But that trusted brand, it goes a long way when you're starting that conversation with a consumer.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, I think the BHE brand has just been amazing, and I'm sure it's just going to continue to strengthen along the way. Well, Ginger, this has been really awesome. I've got one last question I want to ask you. As we get to be, kind of the senior leaders in the space, when I go to the industry events that you go to as well, I walk in the room and I see all of these up and coming young leaders who don't know anything, of course, but they think they do. I'm just kidding. Anyway, all of them are stepping into the roles that you were in and I was in and these next levels. What kind of advice do you have for those leaders coming up in the space?
This is a great question. I would say first, hard work beats ego. It's easy as you're kind of growing in your career, you get some wins to let that ego take place. But everything that I've done in my career for the most part has been because of hard work. There wasn't a whole lot of luck as part of the process. It was just because I was constantly looking for what was the next opportunity. And I think that One is do the hard work. The next is definitely to take those opportunities. Most of the time people aren't going to make your opportunities. You have to really take them. And sometimes that's not exactly what you think it might be. But as I've looked to the different things that I've done, actually a really great example of this. And a few years back, I was the chief experience officer for the third largest wholesale lender in the country. And had just recently gone public. And at the time I felt like I'd achieved a lot of different things in my career, but the one thing that was sort of on my next list was to become CEO of a company. And I had a little bit of a scotoma, I would say, a little bit of a block because I'd never actually run a finance. I'd never been in a finance role. I'd always been in sort of sales, marketing, product, technology, but I hadn't done that financial role. And one day, our CFO came to me and he said, I'd really like for you to run investor relations. And for those of you who know what it's like to run investor relations for a public company, this is a financial role. And I said, I don't think I can do that. And I didn't say that to him, but that was my initial thought. And I didn't have the experience. This is the person that was doing the role had been in the space like 20 years, working in many different public companies. And we ended up having a conversation. And what he said was, you can figure out the numbers because you do numbers every day. You manage your P&L, you're fine. He said, but what you do know how to do is tell a story, and you can connect a story to those numbers. And so I ended up taking on that role. And it was something that actually gave me the confidence for my next role, which ended up being the CEO of another company prior to coming into this role. So always take those opportunities and don't be afraid to stretch beyond what you think you might know, because that's where kind of the magic happens.
That's awesome advice. Yeah. I mean, everybody is afraid, like, oh my gosh, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm going to fall off the cliff, and that's the only place you find growth. So, Ginger, so great to catch up with you. Thanks for taking the time to share with our audience. And guys, we will see you back here and hopefully see Ginger back here real soon on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Matt. It was great.